Let's jump right into part 3. First thing up is msconfig. And before you start yelling at me, yes, we already have talked about this. And no, I'm not going to go back into it all again. All right. But it was on the objective, another bullet point. I don't know if it was a typo, an overlook, exactly. Maybe I jumped the gun on the earlier one and they didn't want me to talk as much about it. But I already have, right? We talked about that in part 1. I think it was part 1 where it is in this domain where we talked about the system configuration, right? Or they call it msconfig when you type it down in the run bar on the task bar down there. Remember, we talked about the general tab, the boot tab, the services. Remember, the startup tab pointed us over to task manager. You couldn't change anything on startup. And then different tools that we can use inside of there as well, which are really just links to things that we can look at a little bit faster, right? Now, Task Manager, this is something that people bring up all the time, right? They say, hey, get into Task Manager. And I think I made the comment earlier about, and I was playing some online games and somebody was having issues and I heard somebody on the headset say, hit Control-Alt-Delete and bring up Task Manager, right? So that makes me grin a little bit that, yeah, that's pretty good. They're thinking about this kind of thing and they know how to at least go in and close applications, right? This looks like it's a screenshot probably from my computer, because I've got the Brave browser and Edge brought up and Outlook and PowerPoint. So I'm pretty sure this is probably a screenshot from my desktop. But there's different things we can look at here, right? First thing up, the processes tab. We know we can kill processes from here, right? We can stop them from running. So in this case, if I would say I wanted to Outlook to close, right? Maybe I hit the button and it won't close, it's hanging. Right? I can come in here, right click on Microsoft Outlook and say end task. And then it will try to force that application to terminate in the background, freeing up resources or freeing up whatever was making that application hang in the first place. Does it always work? No, doesn't always work, but it's a very good place to start. Right? Your performance tab will take a look at your app history, startup. We're going to actually jump into Task Manager and poke around on this a lot. All right, I can see you using this as a help desk technician, a support analyst, daily, weekly at the very least, to close or force close applications, to see what's going on, see who's logged in, look at the app history, see what's been running, and so on and so forth. Some of that we have kind of touched on a little bit. I know we talked about Task Manager. Specifically, we looked at the task kill and task list. Same kind of thing, right? That was command line. This is our graphical user interface to do some of the same things. Disk management is another one. I know we've looked at it. Some of this stuff we did not talk about though, so we are going to dive back in there, right? Where we can see our drive status to see if it's online, to see if it's offline, to see if it's a recovery partition, to see if it's even unallocated space, right? It'll have that black bar say this is unallocated, something we can do whatever we want to with it. We can mount other drives or mount VHD files, those virtual hard drives. We can initialize it, format it. We can extend and shrink our partitions even. Say we made it, 20 gigs, but oh man, we made a mistake. That's the minimum, man. We need 200 gigs, right? You didn't put another 0 on there. Oh, what am I going to do? Well, we can extend that partition, right? We say, okay, we need to go from 20 to 200. Hopefully that other 180 we haven't done anything with, because when you extend it, you're going to destroy all that data. Or maybe you went the other way, right? Maybe you said, oh man, I made a 500 gig partition. It was supposed to be 50 gigs. Well, you can shrink that partition down. And again, as long as you don't have over 50 gigs of data in there, you're shrinking it should not cause any issues, right? The computer takes care of all this. Now, decades ago, this was a pretty big deal. Right, you'd have to use that command tool like the F disk, the fixed disk that we talked about earlier. You could do that, but as soon as it would destroy all the data, right? It couldn't do it like on the fly, so to speak. It would destroy the hard drive if you had to rebuild it. This way, it doesn't do that anymore, and that's kind of nice. We can also get in, assign, and change drive letters. I told you the C drive is the traditional operating system drive, and you could have a D and an F and an E and a G all the way up through Z if you wanted to. We're going to get in and we can say, okay, I want that partition to be the Z drive or the X drive. All right. And there's reasonings for that. You know, maybe you have reasonings. Maybe that's where you have a logon script and all your data gets stored to the Z drive. I don't know. I'm spitballing here. You can add drives, add arrays, storage spaces. We're going to talk about those specifically here. So again, disk management, your one-stop shop for all things disk related, pretty much. I have pretty much in parentheses because, you know, I've said it before. I say it in just about every one of my classes. There's really no absolutes when it comes to IT, other than, you know, a safe computer is the only one that's turned off, unplugged, put in a Faraday cage with no battery and no hard drive. You know, that you may run into absolutes then, but other than that, this is pretty much what you're going to need. And again, this screenshot from, it looks like my computer because got all kind of stuff going on. It looks, there's, I have a media drive, I have my book, I have my thumb drives plugged into it as well. So you see there's all kind of stuff going on my partition. Now, you can, most of this you can do in an elevated command prompt. This is just a little bit more forgiving, right? And what I mean by forgiving is, you know, usually on a command prompt, like if you got in and you use fixed disk, the fdisk tool, and you ran it, it doesn't ask you, are you sure you want to do this? There's no indication that it's doing it. You type it, you hit it, it's going to blink, and it's done. What did you do? If you don't know what command you typed, every little switch, you may not know what you did. At least with this one, it could be a little more forgiving. It may ask you, may prompt you, say, hey, you're about to erase this whole drive. Are you sure you want to do this kind of thing? You can see the progress bars on here. You can see things happening. So that's what I mean by a little more forgiving. You can actually see what it is that you're doing. This is a good place to start. I'm not saying the command line tools are, you know, deprecated, antiquated, or don't have any place, because they definitely do, especially in the scripting world. This is just that's just a good user interface to do those kind of things. Now, adding drives, once we physically add a drive to the system, you know, disk management, it should find the drive. All right. It's not, yeah, it'll find it, because you're probably going to want to turn the computer off, right? So shut it all the way down, put in your new hard drive, turn it back on. As long as the BIOS is recognizing, that's what I said. If not, first check the BIOS settings, and then you can rescan and disk management. But as long as the BIOS is finding it, and once it boots into Windows, disk management should bring this up. If it doesn't, you didn't plug it in properly, the BIOS isn't going to see it either. It could be a driver issue between that and Windows. Something like that could be affecting that. But I'd say most of the time, especially with modern drives today, you go get you a new SSD, a new hard drive, or whatever. You plug it in, disk management should find it. If not, rescan, and I'll show you how you can do that here in just a little bit. You can add arrays. We can have storage spaces with parity or mirroring, right? That could be a software array, right? Where you have an array of disks, which leads us into storage spaces, right? Now, storage spaces are really, really cool if you have the hard drive space. And like I've told you before, storage space is really not one of those break the bank kind of things, right? Their storage space is pretty cheap nowadays in the scope of things. I think the most expensive pieces in there would probably be your CPU and your motherboard. RAM's relatively inexpensive, as storage is probably the cheapest. But with storage spaces, what we can do is group 2 or more drives together in a storage pool, right? So it's kind of like building a dynamic disk, so to speak. But we use the capacity from that pool to create virtual drives that we call storage spaces. All right. Now, the storage spaces typically store 2 copies of your data. Yay, right? That's good stuff. So if one drive fails, you still have an intact copy of the data. That's really, really nice, right? So let's say you have 3 extra hard drives in there, or a great big case, right? If you've taken the Core 1 course, you remember the big case we were working in, right? When we got in there and we looked at the motherboard and the CPU and where the hard drives were, we had all kind of space up in the front where we could have put 3 or 4, 5 more hard drives. Well, I'm not saying go buy 3 or 4 more hard drives. You may have some laying around on a shelf somewhere, right? You got 300 gig over here, 500 gig over there, whatever, because they're older. You don't need, whatever the case may be. Maybe you need to buy more. You could put those in the system, again, as long as you have the connectivity and the power and so on and so forth. But then you can get in and create these pool of drives and create storage spaces. And then they just show up like it's a regular D drive, E drive, G drive, whatever the case may be. All right, now we don't have a lot of hard drives in this, so I can't get in and create storage spaces. We'll see where we can do it. It's going to be the same screenshot that we got here pretty much, but we'll get in and poke around and look at some of this stuff. So, so we don't get too long, I'm going to go ahead and end this part 3 here, but we are going to jump in some demos to talk about some of the stuff we just mentioned. So I'll see you over there in just a second.